Bună ziua, stimați telespectatori și cititori DC News TV, DC News și Defense Romania. După cum ați aflat din promovările pe care le-am făcut în ultimele 24 de ore, îl avem în studio pe Excelența Sa, ambasadorul extraordinar și plenipotențiar al Israelului în București, domnul Reuven Azar. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for participating in this interview.
Mulțumim pentru această oportunitate.
Ambasadorul, stimați telespectatori, vorbește foarte bine românește, dar o să facem acest interviu în limba engleză. După cum o să vedeți într-o secundă, există și subtitrare. Your Excellency, we step directly in the field, in the battlefield. So we have 5 months, 5 very difficult months after the Black Saturday of 7th of October, when it was that massacre in Israel. Is the Israeli generals aware, and Israeli staff, politicians, experts, do you have an idea when this war might end?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on whether we have a hostage deal before or after we finish eradicating the Hamas military machinery. As you know, we have already destroyed about 18 or 19 battalions of Hamas out of around 24 that exist. That means that there is still the area of Rafah in which the Hamas military infrastructure is still intact. And as you know, this infrastructure even surprised us. After the atrocious attack that they made on the 7th of October, a month after, we started the ground invasion, and we found there vast hundreds of kilometers of tunnels, weapon factories, and infrastructure that is embedded within hospitals. You know, there are about 36 hospitals in the Gaza Strip, and in all of them, you had infrastructure underneath. You had the intelligence apparatus of Hamas under an UNRWA headquarters of the Gaza Strip. So this is really was built for decades, and it's one of the most difficult urban warfare challenges that any army ever had, because Gaza is densely populated, and you had to deal with a situation in which you have very high buildings on top and tunnels and infrastructure underneath.
And you have to protect also the civilian population as much as possible.
Right, and we had to take the civilian population out of harm's way, which Hamas tried to prevent. For example, right now, we are surrounding a hospital in the city of Khan Younis, in which Hamas operatives, what they are doing there, do not wear uniform. They just embed within the civilian population. So we had to encircle the hospital and start evacuating people and filtrating who are innocent civilians and who are Hamas people. And this is in the middle of a hospital that is very sensitive in terms of vulnerability of the population. So these things take time. They are very difficult to do, but we are determined to do them according to international law. And that's why we are operating very slowly, with a lot of sensitivity. But of course, unfortunately, as a result of the fact that Hamas is using population and they are abusing basically the norms of humanity in order to prevent us from defeating them, this bears a price. And unfortunately, civilian life tragically is lost as well.
There is a huge number for Israel of losses among the Israeli military. And I understand that this is due to the fact that you try to protect the civilians, and sometimes civilians are, as a matter of fact, the terrorist Hamas, which are attacking the military.
Well, since the beginning of the war, the number of Israeli soldiers that have been killed is not as high as we expected, actually. And this is thanks to the modern tactics that the Israeli military is doing, and thanks to the defense systems that we have installed in our armored vehicles. So the fact that we have active defense systems in our tanks creates a situation in which we can maneuver. If you compare the maneuverability of our army to, for example, the situation in the Ukrainian-Russian front, there all the tanks are being immediately hit by anti-tank missiles, and therefore cannot move. In our case, although almost all the inventory of types of anti-tank missiles were fired at our tanks, they weren't hit. Because even when we hit them, the active systems create a situation in which the tank remains protected. And therefore, there has been a very high degree of success in the survivability of our armored vehicles, and the IDF managed to continue maneuvering. And that's how we managed to, in the last 3 months, we've managed to destroy most of the military infrastructure of Hamas in the northern Gaza Strip, and also in the center, and we are starting in the south as well.
Your Excellency, do you suspect that the weapons from Ukraine went to the Hamas terrorists? And generally speaking, who is providing high-tech weapons? Because I understand that Hamas has also some high-tech weapons right now on the front.
Well, we are seeing that Iran is the main provider of sophisticated weapons, not only to Hamas, but also to other proxies in the region. The Middle East is the only area in the world in which terrorist organizations and militias have more sophisticated weapons that most conventional armies have.
Yes.
Because the Iranians have not only transferred missiles and rockets and other technologies when it comes to communications and intelligence, but also they have transferred the technology of how to produce them. And therefore, what we've seen in this war is that Hamas has fired more than 11,000 rockets against Israel. They have used different techniques to produce these rockets and missiles underground with the help of Iranian advisors. They have been trained in Iran. And in this way, we are in a situation which we had to tackle a much more sophisticated, organized army than you would expect from a average terrorist organization. But as I said, despite the fact that they are doing that and they are embedding themselves within the civilian population in a way that actually abuses any human norm. They are using ambulances to transfer terrorists. They are using hospitals to hide inside. They are actually forcing hospital personnel to cooperate with them. They have actually taken over the activity of UNRWA. The international community has been assisting.
We need to talk about that because it's the second higher in Gaza. 30,000 people were working for this United Nations, and among them, unbelievable, they were terrorist Hamas, which actually helped the disaster, the massacre from 7th of October. And that's why even Romania, but many other countries, they stopped the help to this United Nations agency, which made the population of Hamas, civilians in Hamas, in a very difficult situation.
Yes, I want to share with you that, in the Gaza Strip, there are 13,000 workers of Hamas. And what we have exposed is really absolutely terrible. First, we have seen that under the main headquarters of Hamas in Gaza, the electricity and the communications of the UNRWA headquarters were used to feed the heart of the intelligence apparatus of Hamas. And this was clearly shown in pictures. We have actually had some foreign journalists embedded into that operation to show them how actually Hamas uses the services of UNRWA to feed its military machine. Number one. Number two, among the leaders of Hamas, the top brass of Hamas, there are people that most of their lives worked for UNRWA. So they were using their job in UNRWA to cover for their terrorist activity. In addition to that, we saw that there's been an NGO called UN Watch that exposed that a group of 3,000 employees of UNRWA in Telegram that were actually boasting and celebrating the Hamas massacre in 7th of October. And we've seen 3,000 people
did that
in Telegram, in that group in Telegram.
Yes, we know
they were boasting about. And of course, there were evidence that was transferred to the United States and other countries about 2 actually UNRWA workers that actively participated in the massacre. So this is something that is really concerning because UNRWA has been receiving billions of dollars of assistance from Western countries, and I thanked personally the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania for the decision to stop assisting UNRWA and diverting this assistance to other organizations that really help the needy, like the World Food Program and
there
other
is a lot of
organizations.
need, so it's
There is a lot of need, and the question is how we create a situation in which this abuse by Hamas stops. We don't want to create a situation in which the assistance that is actually flowing to the needy population will continue to be abused by Hamas. And I think we have a responsibility to create the mechanisms in coordination with the international community to stop that from happening.
The Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, had announced officially two main objectives: destroying Hamas after the massacre of 7th of October. He announced that destroying Hamas and liberate the hostages. How is it possible to do that? Because destroying Hamas, many people fear, even in the Israeli talk shows, you have this theme all the time.
Yes.
Hamas probably has no problem to execute the hostages when the IDF is approaching their headquarters of the places where they keep those hostages already for 5 months. Probably many of them are in a very poor medical condition so far.
Well, first of all, this is exactly what Hamas wanted, this dilemma. This is exactly what Hamas wanted to do. They wanted to take the hostages to prevent a ground invasion by Israel. This is not going to happen. We are not going to surrender to terror. And indeed, this creates a dilemma, and we have to calibrate between the needs that we have to destroy Hamas and bring the hostages, but we are determined to achieve both. So what we've seen is that around 50 days after the attack happened by Hamas, we have managed to release about 110 hostages.
Yes.
There are still 134 hostages left. We have been able to militarily rescue few of them. But we are sure that unless we use military pressure, Hamas will not release hostages. Unfortunately, there are reports, and we already have been able to completely verify that there are at least 22 hostages or 25 hostages that have been killed by Hamas after they were abducted. But this is something that we will continue to pursue.
But they also negotiate the bodies. I know it's odd for the European auditor, but Hamas is negotiating the body because you want the bodies to be buried in Israel.
The tactics of Hamas are tactics of terror. So we spoke about how they abuse the international assistance, but what we've seen on the 7th of October is not only crimes against humanity that were committed, crimes of indiscriminate killing of children, of elderly people, of women, rape and burning people alive, but what we've seen is also something that is very rare, and that is boasting about the crimes. Boasting about the crimes. And we've seen it on videos that were immediately released on that day and the days after. So why is Hamas doing that? Why is it that are they boasting? They have an aim. They want to scare off the Israeli people. They want Israelis to get to the conclusion. It's ridiculous. But they want to get to the conclusion that they should leave Israel. And that's why they are determined. And their leaders said that after the 7th of October. They said that they would do the 7th of October again and again and again until they achieve their goal. And that's why we have to eradicate them. We don't have any choice.
You come to my next questions. It was this question. What happened in 7th of October was horrifying for everybody. Killing those babies you mentioned, chopping their heads off, raping and killing the mother with a baby in her body. The question was, why Hamas act like this? Did they want to start a war in all Middle East? They hoped that Iran will intervene directly. They hope that Syria will try to do the same thing. They hope that Lebanon will do the same thing. They hope that maybe Egypt, which is very unlikely, will attack Israel. Why they went above the humanity on the 7th of October?
So as I said, the first reason I think that they did the nature of their crimes is like that is because they want to terrorize the Israeli population, and they know that they cannot destroy Israel militarily, so they are trying to do it in a different way. But I think you're right. They were building on two prepositions, or they were supposing that, first of all, the Arab world, seeing what is happening, that their interest is to get as many Palestinians civilian killed. Okay, that's why they are using human shields. So it creates outrage, it creates a public opinion to put pressure against Israel to stop the military campaign, to put pressure on the governments to fight against Israel, to get support from Iran by putting in action their proxies, which they did. So we've seen fire from and rockets and missiles from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, and from Yemen.
Yes.
And fortunately, Israel has developed very good aerial defense systems that have created a situation in which most of these missiles are neutralized, and the toll of civilian casualties in Israel.
The Iron Dome now is famous. You want to develop it together with Germany, also for the EU countries. Romania is joining.
Well, actually, I'll just finish that point, and then I'll go to the issue of missile defense. But so they were trying to create a situation in which other fronts are being opened against Israel. So Israel is in pressure not to continue the campaign against Hamas, and they were building on the public opinion, not only in the Arab world but also in the West, to stop Israel from fighting against them. All these tactics are going to fail because Israel, as I said, the Israeli public is absolutely determined. And going back to your question about the hostages, a poll was done in Israel regarding this dilemma. And they posed it as a binary question. What would you do? The results are that out of 3 Israelis, 2 say that actually eradicating Hamas is more important than bringing back the hostages. But I don't think that
it's a sacrifice.
This is binary. I don't think this is binary. We think that by putting more military pressure on Hamas, eventually, when they are completely defeated militarily and they are encircled with the hostages, they will negotiate. So, and in this situation, we will be able to rescue the hostages. There is a possibility that the negotiations now in Cairo will bear fruit, and we will do a ceasefire, temporary ceasefire, in order to bring hostages back. But we are not going to stop the war until Hamas is completely eradicated.
That's very good information you gave us. So nobody should expect an Israeli ceasefire now for negotiating for the hostages.
No, you might have a temporary ceasefire.
A temporary ceasefire.
A temporary ceasefire, but not finishing the war. And as
you negotiate in Cairo now.
Yes.
This thing in this very moment, as a matter of fact.
Yes. So there is mounting interest, I think, of different players that a hostage deal happens now. But of course, we are not going to surrender to the dictation of Hamas or of Iran. The Iranian foreign minister is going around Turkey, Qatar, meeting with the leaders of Hamas, trying to make them not to compromise. Because, from the Iranian point of view, this is a win-win situation. They are really interested in debilitating the Arab world in general. So for them to have Arab players, their proxies, fight against Israel and creating instability in the Middle East serves their interest. Because in the past, the Arab world was a threat against them. Okay? And if the war stops in the terms that they prefer, then Israel will become weaker. So they don't have much to lose. And that's why they're pushing for extremist positions of Hamas in the negotiation. They are not interested in instability. And this is very important to understand, because Iran is not only instigator of instability in the Middle East. As we know, they are also a player that creates instability outside the Middle East. For example, in the war between Russia and Ukraine.
About this, I have a peculiar question. His Excellency Ambassador Adrian Zuckerman, on the 9th of October, in an interview with us, he said that it's an axis between Beijing, Moscow, Iran, Tehran against Israel in this terrorist attack against Israel. Do you think that it's the same thing? I mean, those countries are involved in this kind of thing? China, Russia, Iran, supporting Hamas to attack Israel?
First of all, regardless of Israel, we are seeing a more tight cooperation between Russia and Iran. Okay, and they are negotiating as we speak a strategic agreement of cooperation. So not only that Iran has supplied drones to Russia and the means to produce them, but they are negotiating a much tighter strategic cooperation. We know that there is a strategic agreement also between Iran and China, and we know that China also cooperates with Russia. To what extent this is an axis in the Hamas context, I don't know, because although Hamas has been in dialogue with the Russians, I haven't seen the Russians or the Chinese directly supplying weapons or training Hamas people. But I think it is right that for us, our responsibility as part of the democratic world is to not only watch what is happening in the context of this rapprochement between the three countries that you mentioned, but also what we can do to counter that. So in the context of the Middle East, I think there is a mounting interest between Israel and many Arab countries to create more cooperation in order to face this Iranian threat and create a situation. We have, I think, an opportunity to create a situation in which these Arab countries, mainly the countries of the Gulf, remain in the Western sphere.
It is a discussion that this very violent attack which happened on the 7th of October was also due to the fact that Israel succeeded to do these Abrahamic treaties with Egypt, with Jordan, with Bahrain, with the Emirates, and you are negotiating, and I understand you had very good chances to do that with Saudi Arabia, where things are going well. I understand there is a high development in this country, and probably mostly of the people are agreed that the leader of the Arab countries is the Saudi Arabia. And now Saudi Arabia stopped this after the terrorist attack of Hamas. And in the meantime, how is Israel dealing with those countries? Not to mention the statements, I don't know if they were only statements or something else occurred, of President Erdogan against Israel.
Well, first of all, if you compare this atrocious attack of 7th of October with the second Intifada back in the beginning of the century, the difference is that no Arab country has seriously severed their diplomatic relations with Israel. Okay, that tells you something about their interest.
Just to mention for our viewers, Intifada was when Palestinians were attacking with stones the militaries in
Well,
Gaza.
actually, no, the stones was 87. In the year 2000, at the end of the year 2000, they started a campaign of suicide attacks that resulted
You're
in
mentioning
the killing,
this, okay.
in the killing of 1,000 Israeli civilians. Okay, and despite the fact that Israel rightly so defended itself, we had to close embassies all over the Arab world. We had to close then our representation in Oman and in Morocco and in other places. And we had a situation in which the diplomatic relations between us and the Arab world were severed. This time, we see that this didn't happen. So it tells you something about the common interest that is going to, I think, to prevail, because we have to be realistic about this. Even if Israel completely defeats Hamas, what is going to happen with all the other proxies of Iran? We are seeing the Houthis very brazenly disturbing
The Red Sea.
And
Hamas.
International trade. They are a huge threat on Saudi Arabia. This is not going to be solved after we eradicate Hamas. Look what's happening in Lebanon. They are trying to intimidate us from, continue our campaign against Gaza, and Probably Hezbollah is not interested, and we are not interested in full-fledged war, but their threat of Hezbollah is going to remain after this confrontation. I guess, unless we have an escalation. What about the militias in Iraq that are targeting American targets? So all these threats are going to remain after this war, and we are going to continue having a common interest in countering the Iranian threat and in creating prosperity, creating, fulfill huge economic opportunities that we have. So I think this is going to continue. This is a kind of a setback, this war, but I don't think it's going to change the trend.
You also mentioned, Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned that the leaders of Hamas will not be safe in any country of the world when they leave. That is the same opinion of Israel. I mean, leaders of Hamas are now living in Cairo, are living in Qatar, in Doha, are living in some other places all over the world. So they should surrender or they should die.
Well, first of all, this is not the position only of the Prime Minister of Israel. This is the position of the majority of Israelis. We don't think that terrorists...
Definitely. I mentioned the Prime Minister because he is representing the country.
We think that terrorists cannot feel safe anywhere, and they shouldn't feel safe anywhere. And this is something that we can tackle in different ways. I'm not going to elaborate about that, but I think that the fact that the European Union has started to put sanctions on Hamas leaders, finally, the fact that people in Europe are much more aware and concerned from radical Islam when they saw these pictures that happened on the 7th of October. I think that this creates the ground for trying to be more effective, not only as how we tackle the terrorists, but how the entire world tackles the terrorists. We can use not necessarily only violent means, but also economic means and political means in order to encircle the terrorists, in order to make them pariah, in order for them not to be received in capitals. So there is a lot of work to do in that domain.
Did you expect, as a country which was attacked by an important terrorist organization, similar with Al-Qaeda or ISIS, did you expect more help from the civilized world, from the West, for instance, for the United States, from Europe? I know this budget, which is still blocked in the American Congress concerning Ukraine, but also Israel, and the help of United Europe. And here I would like you to mention as much as possible, what do you think about the Romanian attitude about what happened in Israel?
Well, first of all, we are very grateful for the very generous American assistance, but because it has to do not only with financial assistance that is being debated in Congress. It's not being blocked, it's being debated. It was already approved by the administration and by the Senate, so now it's going to have to be debated in the House of Representatives. But in addition to that, the Biden administration has helped us a lot. First of all, by sending forces into the Middle East and deterring Iran and Hezbollah from escalating the war. Second, by tackling some of the missiles that were fired against us from Yemen. Third, by supplying very generous weapon supplies and ammunition that we needed for the war. By providing us a political umbrella in the UN. So there are many things that the United States has been doing for us, and we are very grateful for that. We are working with the Americans also on the humanitarian front, because our role is to facilitate humanitarian assistance, but there are countries that actually are donating the necessary needs of the Palestinian population. And for us, it's important that they continue to do so, of course, in a way that will serve the population, not the terrorists. In addition to that, we've seen a very encouraging support from Europe. Unprecedented.
Even if the official statements were a little bit, how shall I say, more in favor of stopping
Well, we have to look at the nuance, because when you look at the resolutions, first of all, there was the first heads of state, the European Council resolution that was very supportive for the right of Israel to defend itself, and then even in the European Parliament resolution that was adopted, and in the resolution that was adopted by the Assembly, the Parliamentarian Assembly of the Council of Europe, although in these resolutions there is a call for a ceasefire, it's conditioned with the eradication of Hamas. So that is very encouraging. So yes, we are seeing criticism from Europe, but we are also seeing a lot of support. And as I said before, I think that although there have been demonstrations against Israel in many places, we think that the majority, and we have been seeing it in polls, are very concerned from the rise of this radical Islam and the atrocities they have committed. They are concerned from the presence, actually, of minorities in Europe that are radicalized and they are supporting such atrocities. And therefore, I think there is a common interest that Israel actually does the job that it wants to do, and that's to eradicate the military capabilities of Hamas. Of course, there is concern for the Palestinian population. We understand that. We are concerned. And that's why we are on a day-to-day basis working with the international organizations and with our partners, with the United States, with Europeans and others, in order to meet the needs of the population, in order to try to put the population out of harm's way. And even if when we do decide to finish the military campaign by taking over Rafah and the border with Egypt, this will be done only after we find solutions for evacuation of the population to a safe haven, because we are not interested in acting in a scenario in which the population will be hit. So we have a common interest. There are some disagreements sometimes, but at the end of the day, I think we share a common goal and we have a common interest.
Normally, yes. The civilized world has a common interest. In this perspective, Qatar, I understand, helped the first exchange of hostages, the liberation of the first hostages, and also you were negotiating, and you were very close, these Abrahamic treaties with Saudi Arabia. Are you optimistic about the diplomatic relationship with those two important countries? And also, maybe you can mention a little bit the relationship with Turkey right now, because Turkey it's an important power not only in Mediterranean but also on the Black Sea. It's important for Romania as well.
Yeah. Well, first of all, regarding Saudi Arabia, I think we discussed. I'm pretty sure we have a common interest to achieve these goals of prosperity and of trying to protect ourselves from the Iranian threat. When it comes to Qatar, it's a bit more tricky because the Qataris actually support the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. That is perceived as a threat not only for us, but also for many Arab countries that are concerned from the approach of Qatar. We are seeing how they are using this channel, Al Jazeera channel, which is a huge media corporation worth of billions of dollars.
Al
Jazeera, that is actually spreading, being used as a propaganda tool for Hamas. We are seeing actually in Gaza, we have published only yesterday, day before yesterday, that some of the Al Jazeera journalists are actually Hamas operatives. So they claim that we killed...
It's official, this?
Yes. So we are seeing that some of the Al Jazeera reporters are Hamas operatives, okay? So it's very clear.
I mean, you kill people and then you broadcast news at the TV?
Yes. For example, there was one Al Jazeera journalist that actually participated in the attack of 7th of October and took pictures.
It's one, but not
No,
one.
there is now another one. These are only the guys that we have proof against. There are many more. And you have to differentiate. There is a difference between Al Jazeera English, that approach to the Western world, and Al Jazeera in Arabic, that addresses the Arab world. And Al Jazeera Arabic is really an instrument that promotes radicalism, that promotes Hamas. Very problematic. So I think that we have a challenge because Qatar, does some things that are actually support American interests. They are hosting a military base of the biggest American military base. So they are sort of they're trying to catch the rope from both sides. And that's pretty tricky. We have to deal with that. Now, regarding Turkey, I think it's very unfortunate that their leader has adopted such a populist position. We have common interests with Turkey. We're continuing our relations with Turkey.
You have a tough commerce with
Yes.
Turkey. Israel and Turkey is something very serious,
Right.
common business.
Right. And hopefully we are going to have a continuation of that. We have common interest with the Turkish people. I think that it was very unfortunate to see the approach of their leader, not only in our context, also in other contexts that are very problematic for NATO and others. So, you know, at the end of the day, every country has to elect their own leaders and decide what they want to do. We don't have an interest to create confrontation with Turkey. We have an interest to have good relations with them, and we hope that that approach will change in the future.
Well, I guess Israel has an interest to have good relations with everybody, as a matter of fact, not to make war. But it's a very difficult question. It's the question with majuscules. Sir, do you think it's possible, it's still possible, to have two countries in the region, Israel and Palestine, after what happened on the 7th of October?
Well, I think that what happened on the 7th of October was a huge setback for the idea of a Palestinian state. Because imagine, you know, the Palestinians had in Gaza full sovereignty, almost full sovereignty until the 6th of October. Yes, we were concerned that Hamas would contraband weapons, and that's why we didn't allow them to build a port. But all the needs of Gaza were supplied through land, through Egypt and through Israel. And the Palestinian people were actually pretty independent there. We left the Gaza Strip in order not to come back to it. We didn't left the Gaza Strip in 2005 because we wanted to come back. And actually, one of the reasons that Israel hasn't taken a much more severe military action against Hamas before is because we didn't want to go back to the Gaza Strip. Actually, this attack by Hamas forced us to go back. And this is a huge setback for Palestinians. Imagine the suffering of the Palestinian population. Imagine the devastation of the infrastructure. So, you know, people can talk highly about slogans or solutions.
Yes.
At the end of the day, you have to create a real path.
When you go on the field, you need to find a solution.
Right. So this can be done only when the Palestinians decide, first of all, that it's more important for them to have their own state than to destroy the Jewish state. Right now, what is happening, and what was happening in Gaza, that the entire generation of Palestinians was educated by Hamas, that destroying the Jewish state is more important than having a Palestinian state. So that has to change. How you can create a viable Palestinian state when the Palestinians are more concerned with destroying Israel than having a state of their own?
Do you think that the West Bank can be attracted by what happened in Gaza? Because I know their Fatah, it's a laïc organization. Hamas has also this religious component. And do you think the situation might be worse in West Bank as well?
Well, we've been taking pretty intensive action in order to prevent the situation in which in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria you have a deterioration of the security situation. Because even before the 7th of October, there was a lot of activity of Hamas in the West Bank, and you had a lot of attempts by the Iranians to contraband weapons through Jordan to the West Bank.
Yes.
You had forces not only in Gaza but also in Lebanon working to try to instigate terrorist attacks within the West Bank, trying to send money, doing training. So the fact that we are eradicating the Hamas military machine in Gaza increases the chances that in the future we'll be able to stabilize the West Bank even more. And at the end of the day, the Palestinian Authority will have to make a decision whether they are more interested in creating stability and prosperity for their people and being more effective about governance and fighting terrorism, or they want to stay in the situation they've been in the very poor performance they've been showing until now.
Sir, it was an extraordinary thing happened after 7th of October. The whole Israeli people responded as a single person against the threat. That means that the hundreds of thousands of military that Israel has now under weapons They're, in a matter of fact, doctors, engineers, workers, professors, and they are there for already 5 months. How is doing the economy of Israel? How do you change those people? I mean, the families are at home, and one man or one woman is on the front in Gaza in this awful war, as a matter of fact, because the most difficult war, as you mentioned, is to fight among the civilians, among the block of flats, in these very difficult conditions. How the economy of Israel is doing in this situation? It's a new attitude. You were not used with that for many years, for decades.
Well, first of all, the economy is doing pretty well, and I'll elaborate in a second. But what we've seen really is a show of solidarity amongst the Israeli people.
Yes, all over the world.
That is really, really encouraging, heartwarming. I'm talking about initiatives, volunteering initiatives of just, citizens that decided that they want to help people in need. And you've seen thousands, if not tens of thousands of initiatives of help, whether it be financial help, food, supplying shelter. And that is in addition of all the actions, of course, that the government is doing in order to take care of the population that has been hit both in the south and also in the north. So this is really amazing. You see initiatives that people are volunteering to work in the fields of those villages that were hit. You are having citizens that are just volunteering to drive people from one place to another, to donate food, to donate clothes. It's really heartwarming, and this shows the degree of solidarity that we have in our country. And sometimes I was. People are amazed of the fact that in this index of happiness of nations, Israel always ranks very high.
Yes, that's true.
They don't understand.
It used to rank very high.
It's the case now. And one of the parameters of this, I was curious to understand how that is possible in a situation like we have in our region. And when I looked at the parameters, I saw that besides things that you might think that are, taken for granted, like material satisfaction, the issue of solidarity is one of the parameters. The solidarity in the society. Freedom, of course, is very important, the fact that we are a democratic country. But the factor of solidarity within the society is very important in creating a happy nation.
Even if you
this is what we have in Israel.
Completely different political views among the Israeli people.
Right.
But solidarity is there.
Yes. Now, when it comes to the economy, only a few days after the war started, our entire industry went back to work. And actually, we don't have any problems with production whatsoever. The fact that we had the aerial systems that we talked about, the fact that we had robustness when it comes to the cyber field, because there are many cyber attacks.
Yes.
And we have managed to sustain them. Our
modern weapons are only cyber.
Yes. So in this regard, Israel is very resilient. All our civilian, all the parts of the economy are working. The financial system, the factories, the services, everything is functioning, and even to a certain extent, some of the factories went even to more production. So yes, we are having a hit when it comes to tourism, but tourism is not a major factor in the Israeli economy. So right now, when it comes to, for example, income of the government from taxes, there is some drop, but it's not a dramatic drop. So we are, we saw that Moody's brought down a bit our rating when it comes to investment. It's not a major drop. It's going to make us pay a little bit more for the loans that we're paying. But when it comes to our situation, we have a ratio of about we were at the beginning of the war at a ratio of about 60% debt of GDP. We might go up to 67, but we are pretty sure that after the war, the Israeli economy will recover very fast, just as we recovered from COVID.
Wow. I fully agree with you. Your Excellency, 25% of the Nobel Prizes are awarded to Jewish people in different fields. I do hope, and everybody probably including the Arab world, that we all respect very much. I do hope you will find a solution in the region and living in peace all those countries, and Israel, which was created 3,000 years ago, as a matter of fact, from the King David period, as a matter of fact.
Well, indeed, we have a very long history, and we have heritage, and we have common values that we share with the world when it comes to humanity, morality, solidarity, freedom, and we think it's very important. We think that in order for the human genius to contribute to society, you have to have conditions. You have to have freedom. You have to have the capability of being entrepreneurial. You have to have peace. And Israel always has fought for peace. The fact that we have managed to do, we've managed to sign peace agreements with Egypt and with Jordan and with Abraham Accord countries, that means that at the end of the day, this is possible, that we have to continue working in order to do that, that we have to counter those forces that are trying to destabilize the region. And I'm very optimistic because I know that we have succeeded to do it in the past, and we have created in Israel, we have used this ingenuity to create, actually to contribute to the world in many ways. When it comes to medicine, when it comes to food security, when it comes to green energy, when it comes to cybersecurity and communications and many things. You know, in Israel, we have now 89 unicorns. These are startups that are worth more than $1 billion.
Yeah,
this is one of three main concentrations of unicorns in the world. Two of them are in the United States, in Silicon Valley in New York.
Third is Israel.
Yes. So this means that despite the fact that we are facing these challenges, we are able not only to survive, but also to thrive. And we will continue to do that despite the attempts to discourage us.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Stimați telespectatori, a fost într-un interviu exclusiv cu foarte multe informații, o să le vedeți în știrile noastre. Excelența Sa, ambasadorul Reuven Azar, ambasadorul extraordinar și plenipotențial al Israelului la București. Vă mulțumim încă o dată, domnule ambasador.
Mulțumim.
Pe curând rămâneți alături de emisiunile noastre.